Hey everyone, hope you're all well. Just thought I'd come on and do a quick live with you guys tonight, and talk about a few of the things that have happened over the last week. Being that it's Saturday night, I won't keep you here very long. I'm sure you've all got things to do. Just give me one second. Just muting the TV. While I don't submit to mainstream media, I do like to sometimes watch and have a bit of a laugh at what's getting put out there. I wanted to talk to you guys about the North Melbourne lockdown that's still going on, for Alfred Street, and the confusion that reigns supreme because these lockdown measures are very, very, very confusing. So if we read what it actually says here for people in lockdown, it really is hard to understand exactly how they do it. Hey, Dawid. Hey, Lisa. Hey, Rebecca. Hey, Suma. Please do write if you're in. Interaction's always good with these things. So things that are written on the DHHS website. So I implore and I ask all of you guys to have a look at DHHS. Hey, Rebecca Naylor. Hey, Damien. So have a look at the DHHS website. Give me some questions as well. Any of your questions I'll try and answer on here. The DHHS website has here, what happens if I'm confirmed as having coronavirus? When you're informed that you have tested positive, you must start your isolation. You will be regularly contacted by the Department of Human Health and Services. You cannot end isolation until you meet the relevant clearance requirements. The department will discuss these requirements with you. Further details can be found on the dedicated coronavirus hotline. Okay? What if my coronavirus test was negative? Okay? If my coronavirus test was negative, you should still isolate at home until your symptoms are complete and you feel unwell. If you feel unwell and your test was negative, you should still isolate at home until your symptoms have gone. Taking this precaution will stop you passing any illness on to others. Okay, let's keep reading through. Hi, Stevie Fraser. Hi, Arena. Quarantine at home. Who is required to quarantine? The following groups are required to quarantine: international travelers, people living with a diagnosed person, people who have come into close contact with a person who is confirmed to have coronavirus, people who have been advised by the Department of Health and Human Services that have been exposed to an exposure site. People who have been advised by the Department of Health and Human Services that have been exposed to an exposure site should be in quarantine. So are you hearing what we're saying here? Now, Dan Andrews in the government locked all these people down, said it was in all the towers except for 3, and yet all the other towers have come out except for 1 tower. But here it says people have been advised by the Department of Human and Health Services to an exposure site. So those other, I'm trying to do the maths. 3 had none at all, so they should all be out 100%. That means all the other towers had coronavirus within their sites. Every other tower must have had it. And yet only 1 tower is still in lockdown. But they're contradicting their own information here on the DHHS site, which is people have been advised that they have been exposed to an exposure site. Now, what about all the workers that have been on those exposure sites as well? So every single worker that's been in those areas should be quarantining because they've been on the sites. So are they going to then put all their own DHHS staff into quarantine? The police people that are there, should they all be in quarantine as well? That's the question you need to try and work out because it's a complete contradiction. Hi, Anita D. Hope you're doing well. Let's have a read through a little bit more because it gets more ridiculous. And this is where people have to wake up to what the narrative is doing. And I've got friends that I've known for years telling me that I'm crazy and whatever else and following my page. Follow my page. I mean, stop following my page. I don't care. It's no loss to me. I'll give you love and light. I'll be waiting when you come back when you realize the narrative doesn't make sense with open arms. And I'll give you a giant hug as well. So the next bit, how long do I have to quarantine if I live with the diagnosed person? You should quarantine for 14 days when the last coronavirus diagnosed person are isolating at the premises is given clearance. So 14 days from when the last person gets given clearance. This means if you live with 2 or more people that have been diagnosed, the 14 days starts from when the last diagnosed person at the premises is given clearance. So you need to quarantine for 14 days after the last person on your site is cleared from their COVID-19. What? What is this? It makes no sense, guys. And I was around DHHS, and those guys don't have any idea what this is about. And PCR, these tests that they're using, they're not accurate either. And we've got Welcome Home here who lives in the tower saying, what about IGA at the building? So IGA is at the ALT building across the road. The ALT building is private residencies, and they didn't get put into any lockdown, but all of the guys from the towers shop at the IGA. So I'm calling for you guys to share this out. We want the ALT building, the private residency, put into full lockdown. Let's see the state government put that private building with private residents, which have a heap of money, in that building where the IGA is, where all these guys shop at the same supermarket. How many people in that building are dropping dead with coronavirus? Because have you put that building into lockdown? Would you put that building into lockdown? That's my question. Would you lock it down for us? Because I don't think that you will do it. And here we've got someone from within the tower saying they shop there. They've shopped there a lot. So if there's a coronavirus through all these towers at Flemington, they've all been shopping in the same place, and it's the IGA at the bottom of the private building, ALT building. We need to put that ALT building into lockdown. A lot of Chinese residents, a lot of private residents. ALT building in Flemington should be in a hard lockdown because everyone shops in that IGA. And yet they didn't even go into a hard lockdown. They're in stage 3. If coronavirus was real and as bad as what people call it, if coronavirus was as bad as what people call it, why don't we have people dying in their houses? No one I know in Victoria has died from coronavirus without having a coronavirus test. Not a single person has died from coronavirus without having a coronavirus test. If this was like the plague, you would have people dying in their households because people are scared to go and get these tests done. People are scared to go to the hospitals. If this was like the plague, people would be dying in their houses everywhere. So it's not actually happening. It's not happening. People aren't dying in the streets and dying in their houses. Yeah, Freedom of Information does say this test isn't a plausible test. A Nobel Prize winning scientist said that this test is not a test they should be using. Where have the flu stats gone, Darwood? 80% down this year, the flu is, 80% lower. And you know what? Something really amazing, I would say, this year. I'm guessing less people than ever have died from old age this year because we've cured old age. People don't die from old age anymore. They die from COVID. So, you know, the other day that 90, and I'm sorry for the person passing away, the person over 90 years old who was in hospital died of COVID. There's no seasonal flu. Seasonal flu is being cured. Because if you feel sick, if you feel unwell, you need to get a COVID test. And every time I guarantee you that comes up. We're going to get Freedom of Information to find out if these nurses, and it's nothing against nurses, but we're going to find out if these nurses got coerced with money for how many COVID tests they got done. And it's lies how many people are in these flats because they're saying there's 2,515 tests got done. 2,515 out of 3,000 people is around 85%. 2,515 tests out of 10,000 plus people, because these most vulnerable people, some of them have 10 or more people in their units living there, because that's how bad our housing crisis is in Melbourne. We're going to have a good look into this as well, because the Labor government is currently privatising all of our housing. All our public housing is being privatised. And if you saw the cock-up that DHHS and these guys were doing in the background here, if you saw what was happening in the background here with DHHS, the police and all these other guys and how they can't work together, you will realize that all of these public housing flats getting moved to privatization is the worst decision that can be made. And I want you guys to Google the privatization of these. And when you Google it and work it out, the privatization of all these housing commission flats, there's pages on Facebook fighting against it, and you guys need to fight against it as well. Get on there and fight against it, because what you're going to find is if they privatize these public housing units, people are going to be fucked around more than they already are. And we don't want that. And we don't want that at all. And I can see here the guy who lives at the flats says more like 5,000. That's just at Flemington. And then the North Melbourne ones as well. There's close to 10,000 people in these units. And they only got 2,515 tests. In which case, where it says, if you live with a diagnosed person and you are then diagnosed, you stop being in quarantine, you must go into isolation. So quarantine and isolation are two different things. Just going to read what you guys are saying. Yes, so Curious Observer is not unsubstantiated. They definitely have development plans for these housing units. Have a look, called the Public Housing Renewal Program. It's all, I put a post up about it about 3 or 4 days ago. So have a look back in my YouTube things and share it everywhere. It got shared 25,000 times. The funny thing is, because we're on the ground and because we're inside, we're in the inner sanctum, we got so much information out to Victorians and people that I don't think they could keep these people locked down longer, because we're sharing all the information. So you can't lie when there's people in there telling the truth. How do you lie against someone who's actually there saying this is what's really happening? You can't do it. You can't do it. Okay. Do you want to learn some more about coronavirus from the DHHS website? Who is a close contact? Close contact means having face-to-face contact for more than 15 minutes. I don't know where they get these numbers from. Or sharing a closed space for more than 2 hours with a confirmed case of coronavirus. Close contact is 15 minutes, having face-to-face contact for 15 minutes. I don't know about you guys, but I don't talk face-to-face with many people for 15 minutes, to be honest. Or sharing a closed space for more than 2 hours with a confirmed case of coronavirus. And yet, up further, it says, if someone's in quarantine and you're not, can they live in the same house as you? Yes. Yes, they can. You can continue going out and doing your thing, and that person who's quarantined because they're sick or whatever, you can be in the same house living with them, but you can continue going out, even though there is a closed space. And these directives are coming from WHO as well, WHO. So let's keep reading through this, shall we? Close contact can happen in many ways. Living in the same household or a household-like setting, such as a boarding school or a hostel. Direct contact with bodily fluids or laboratory specimens of a confirmed case. Ew. Being in the same room or office for 2 hours or more. Face-to-face contact for more than 15 minutes in some other settings, such as in a car or a lift or sitting next to them on public transport. It makes no sense. So if I'm sitting in close contact with them for 14 minutes, so if I'm there for 14 minutes in close contact, if I'm in close contact for 14 minutes, I won't be considered. And how are they contact tracing this anyway and realizing if it was 14 minutes or 15 minutes? Because I don't want to get sick. If I'm at 13 minutes, if I set my timer and flip my egg timer 5 times, then just before it gets to the end, I'm going to have to move on, because 15 minutes is close contact. How long do I have to quarantine if I am close contact? If you are notified, because you have to be notified that you're a close contact, remember? DHHS is going to work out that you're a close contact that was around them for 15 minutes. If you say I was with them for 12, I wonder if you can continue moving. But wait, if they're tracking your phone or through the COVID Safe app, maybe they'll know it's exactly 15 minutes. Because in the end, these masks have a lot more to do with facial recognition happening than anything else. Don't forget that, because it all links back together. If a person, you must quarantine at home. If you're notified that you're a close contact, you must quarantine at home until a date stated in a notice from DHHS. You must, if you're diagnosed with coronavirus, you must isolate until you receive a clearance from the department. So if you're diagnosed with coronavirus, you must isolate until you receive a clearance from the department. What if I live with someone who is in quarantine, you may ask? Don't worry, there's an answer here. If I live with someone who's in quarantine, if they stay well, there's no need for me to also quarantine. So I can live with the person who's quarantining, but if they stay well, I don't have to quarantine too. If they become unwell, I need to get medical advice and get tested for coronavirus. So if they're in quarantine and they get seasonal flu or they get cancer or they get something that makes them unwell, because this says if they get unwell, I should go and get a corona test. They will then call me a close contact. And if it's a confirmed case, I'll be required to go to quarantine. But I thought that was when I had to go to isolation. When do I go to isolation and when do I go to quarantine? I'm so confused. And I've only read 3 parts of what it says here in DHHS. If at the end of the quarantine period, I stay unwell, no. If at the end of the quarantine period, I stay well, I can leave quarantine. So if I stay well through the whole quarantine period, because I'm getting quarantined because I'm a close contact, but not because I'm sick. If I stay well because I was well the whole time, then I can leave quarantine. I don't need a medical certificate to enable me to return to other activities. So if I feel well throughout the whole quarantine period and I stay well, I don't need a medical certificate to enable me to go to other activities, even if someone else is quarantined with me, whether they're a well quarantine, but if they find out they're sick, they need to get a COVID test, no matter what the sickness is, so then they can be isolated, but they can isolate where I live. Okay, that's easy. This is easy. What do I do if I feel unwell when I'm quarantined? So, if you start to feel unwell, and if you get any of the typical symptoms of coronavirus, so that's a cough, a runny nose, less smell. Well, generally when my nose is blocked, I can't smell as much, which a common cold does too. Headaches or a temperature. If I get any of that when I'm in quarantine, I call a dedicated coronavirus hotline. That's good, 24/7. Then I call my GP, and I have to mention if I've had any recent contact with a person confirmed to have coronavirus, but that's DHHS is going to tell me that because they tell me if I'm a close contact. Okay, cool. Can I go outside if I'm in quarantine? No. Can I visit someone in hospital when I'm in quarantine? In limited circumstances, someone who is in quarantine can visit a patient in hospital. Is that if I'm well or unwell in quarantine? You can get deliveries when you're in quarantine, but you have to keep physical distancing. So if a delivery comes, make sure you're there for under 15 minutes. Wow. That simplified everything. I'm so happy I came across this website because I wouldn't have known what to do because it was really confusing. Because it says here, if I go and get a COVID-19 test and I still feel unwell, I should still isolate. Do I quarantine or do I isolate? That will stop me giving anyone any illnesses. So, okay. So I have to isolate if I've got COVID-19, and I have to isolate if I have COVID-19, but I have to isolate if I've got COVID-19 and DHHS will get in touch with me, but I also have to isolate if I just feel unwell and I don't have a COVID-19. So either way, I need to isolate if I feel unwell, whether I've got COVID-19 or I don't have it, I need to isolate. So, but then I need to, if I am well, I still need to wash my hands and wear a mask, even if I'm well. It doesn't matter if I'm sick or not, I should still wear a mask. and I don't need to isolate if I'm well, except if I'm around someone who is feeling unwell because they're isolating, even though they've tested negative. I should wear the mask just in case I'm in a closed quarters, but not for 15 minutes. If I'm in closed quarters for 13 minutes in a mask, I will be unwell or well. Okay. So it says here as well, if I'm unwell and I haven't been tested, no matter what it is that I'm feeling unwell with, you should get tested and then stay isolated till you get your test. The more people we test, the more data we'll have about COVID-19. Okay, cool. That's good to know. How long do I isolate? You must isolate until you receive a clearance from isolation from DHHS. But this is telling me to isolate. If my test was negative and I feel unwell, I should isolate anyway. So do I sit in my room and isolate when I've found out that I'm just unwell? When's DHS going to call me? Because I haven't done a test. My test came back negative, but I'm saying I'm still unwell. So it's telling me I should isolate. And then it's saying you should isolate. The distance you isolate is until DHHS calls me. But my test came back negative and I'm still isolating. What if I stay in there and they never call? Do I just stay? For like, it doesn't have a date. It says DHHS will call me when I need to come out of isolation. Wow. This is really confusing. Wow. So when you test positive to isolation, no, when you test positive to COVID, you don't have to stay where you are. You have to immediately travel to somewhere where you're going to isolate. Where do you isolate? You must stay at the same place that your isolation begun. So who is required to isolate is those that are sick, but I can travel to where I need to isolate, but so I don't have to stay where I found out, because I'll probably find out at a hospital or whatever. But if you're in isolation, you must stay at the same place where your isolation began until you receive clearance. But if I isolate, because it says I should isolate even if I get a negative test and I don't feel well, and I need to do it from the place where I first started my isolation. But I can travel out of my isolation to get to where I want to isolate. So this is so much clearer. I'm so happy I found this website, because without this, I would have been really stuck. And it says here, if you're in isolation or quarantine at home, I should stay in a different room to other people as much as possible. So not all the time, just as much as possible. And I should sleep in a separate bedroom and use a separate bathroom if it's available. But if there's only one bathroom, I guess we'll be using the same one. So that's good. But it does say I can have household assistants, so people can come and do my cleaning, but I must stay 1.5 meters away from them if I'm isolating or quarantining. It doesn't tell me here if I should wear a mask or not. So that's really hard too. So yeah, that's it. That's it in a nutshell. Oh, there's one more thing. Sorry, I didn't want to confuse you guys. What is the difference between quarantine and isolation? So it is rounded up here. I can try and make a lot more sense, because that was a bit confusing. Quarantine separates and restricts the movement of people who have been or may have been, or may have been. So quarantine separates and restricts the movement of people who have been or may have been. So it doesn't mean you necessarily have been around someone for more than 15 minutes or in a lift for more than 2 hours, but you may have been. There's a chance I may have been around people that had COVID-19. So that means I need to go into quarantine because I may have been, because it's here. It says I may have been. I think all of you may have been around someone who had COVID-19. So that makes it clearer. So basically, all of us need to be in quarantine right now. Um, and people who are living with a person diagnosed with coronavirus or a close contact must quarantine at home. And also those ones that may have been exposed. So if you may have been, then be careful because yeah, it's kind of it's not all congruent. It's not all easy to understand. Uh, Isolation separates people with coronavirus from those who do not have it. You should isolate at home or at another suitable location if you've tested positive, or if you feel unwell, but it's not coronavirus. But you can travel to where you want to isolate, but you have to isolate at the place that exactly where it is. So that's clear. There is something about masks here. So if you have any underlying health conditions, you shouldn't wear a mask. But if you're sick with coronavirus, you should wear a mask. And don't wear the mask always around your home unless you're around people that are isolating or quarantined. But isolate if you're feeling unwell. But don't wear a mask unless you've got coronavirus. Then you probably should wear a mask. That's it. So hopefully that cleared that all up. I hope you can share that out if you want to. If there's anyone that's confused about quarantine and isolation and coronavirus, you can share that one out just to clarify and make it a bit easier for them to know how it all works. Last thing I was going to talk about, did someone say KFC? No. Yeah, so hopefully that cleared everything up. Now, today we went out to North Melbourne and clear as mud. Perfect. And that's kind of how it felt out at Flemington when we were trying to get our paperwork inside. It was like, can we bring the paperwork inside? Oh, DHS said you need to go and speak to people in housing. So we go to the people in housing. So because these are houses, do we give you this paperwork to get it into the people in the houses? No, that's because they're sick. You have to go to health. Oh, thanks, housing. Hey, health. We've got this paperwork for these people because they're going through mental health things and things like that. For the adults, and so there's stuff there for the kids too. Oh well, kids, you've got to go to child protection. Okay, thanks, health. Child protection. We've got this box of legal stuff that we need to get through. We're just wondering, have you spoken to health? Oh yeah, we spoke to health. Have you spoken to the other guys? Yeah, no, we spoke to them too. So we're just wanting to get this legal stuff. So have you spoken to the guys from Fitzroy Legal? Yeah, no, Fitzroy Legal couldn't come down here because they're in lockdown, and they want to advocate for the people in lockdown, but they can't come down to the lockdown because they're not allowed out of their lockdown. So we're here trying to be people for them. Have you spoken to the police? Yeah, well, we spoke to the police, and they told us to come and speak to you at DHHS, and they said you guys could help with it. Yeah. We'll get it put into the food boxes, but then the police need to check the food boxes to make sure there's no drugs going in to the people. But what about the medication? Oh, yeah, no, they did stop some of the medication because it does classify as a drug. So that stuff's getting moved around the other side. The SES took those bags away, but they're being checked now, and the drugs that were there were the medication. So we're going to move those bags back in, but the fireys can't do it because the fireys were going to do that building, but they weren't ready because the police hadn't checked with DHHS. And you can't just walk into the buildings because there's people in there that are unwell. So I think that helps. Where are we at now? I'm like, well, my box is still here in my hands. It's 2 days later, and no one's got the information yet. I can put on a mask and stuff, and I can go up there, and I know if I get into close contact with someone who's sick, I'll have to isolate and quarantine, whether I get a positive test or if I just feel unwell. And I can go in my family house, but I can, if there's only one bathroom, we can all use it. So I'm pretty much on top of everything. I read the DHHS website, so it's easy. So yeah, I hope you guys can see. I'm just trying to put a spin on this to show you how crazy this stuff is. And you need to understand and show this to people that this is what's happening out there. We're sane and we're intelligent people. The people who are on the pages and say they're nurses saying people just need to get tested. Look at the test. There was paperwork that was sent to Greg Hunt from a leading scientist saying out of every 100 tests, only 50 of them are going to show the right results. And that's because a PCR test isn't what should be used to detect coronavirus. So, you know, there's real and true information saying this shouldn't happen. And so the nurse is just telling everyone you need to put on a mask. Think about what you're actually telling people here and look around the world and do some research. Please, everyone, just do your own individual research because we were there. We're at ground zero from the start to the end. I'm releasing a video tomorrow to let you guys see. I was going to do it today. I didn't want to rush it along, but we're going to release a video tomorrow. And if you saw the coercion that was happening with people getting tested, don't you think that when mandatory vaccinations come around that you're not going to be coerced towards taking it? They'll go for the most vulnerable first. They'll try and do money handouts. They'll do fear tactics that then make everyone else jump on board as well. Yes, North Melbourne. So we went out to 33 Albert Street. They've got all their paperwork. So the guys over at AMSA, which is the Muslim society over there, put all the paperwork in. So it's in every building. They know who they can ring if they're having any mental health issues. They've got the ombudsman's directives as well. So it's all in there at 33 Albert Street. We went tonight and we got a whole heap of balloons, the ones that glow in the dark, and we put 53 of them. For the 53 people that have been used as scapegoats, saying 53 of them have COVID. We gave 53 of them just a little bit more light today. We put them all along the fence, and the people from upstairs were waving down to us. It's all there for them to see. And, you know, we as a community, as a whole, are going down there again tomorrow. I've signed up at the community centre to do photography lessons and to talk to people about mental health, anxiety, and depression, and to give them the tools they need to move forwards without fear. Now, I always talk about this. I'm going to do it for the last time here. If you feel that you're suffering from a lot of depression, quite often it's because you're living with regret and guilt from the past. Now, regret and guilt, the two things you need to do: own any mistakes you've ever made. That's a really big one. Own any mistakes and say, yep, I fucked up, so I can move forwards. The things that are there that you can't control, I have a thing that I call there's two things. You have a chest that you can put things in. So if it's something you can't deal with straight away, put it in the chest, all those things, and lock it and put the key aside. And that chest, you only unravel it and do them one by one to help you move forwards. The next thing we do is have a thing called the fuck it bucket. So the things you can't change that you've owned and said, yep, I fucked up, don't let them weigh on you. Take them and put them in the fuck it bucket. And then once you put a few of those things in the fuck it bucket that you can't do anything about, the mistakes you've made, they're gone. You can't let them bring you down. Put them in the fuck it bucket and then light that thing up and burn it. And that stuff's gone for good. And that takes all that weight off your shoulders, okay? The next thing I would say, anxiety, and that's what a lot of people are suffering with right now, which gives you that shortness of breath and makes your immune system drop. Anxiety is about looking to the future, okay? So anxiety is about looking forwards and fearing things. Fear is not real. Fear is created, and fear is being created by so many people. So you need to realize that fear is based on irrational thoughts, and fear can be overridden. The easiest way to get rid of fear is to easiest way to, someone just wrote, don't go down there tomorrow, you'll get arrested. That's fucking ridiculous. The police aren't there to start arresting people. It's not about protesting. And why would I leave lamb to the slaughter and take lamb to the slaughter? You're just fucking stupid and you're gone off the page. And that's with love. You can fuck off. With fear, it's all in the mind. So think about this. If you're thinking forwards and you're irrationally worrying about things, so this virus, now again, remember, this virus is, what do we say? Over 120,000 people have been tested in the last week, and less than 1,000 people have said they've got COVID-19 from the tests, positive tests. And a lot of those will be false positives. So let's think maybe 700 people. So that is less than 1% of people that they've said are unwell. Less than 1% that they're saying are unwell. But the fear that causes in people, because they say the numbers have spiked today. The numbers have spiked today. One day they're 110. The next day they're 180. Then the next day they go down to 110 again, and they say it's spiked again today. 288, down to 180. It's fear mongering. They're trying to scare people. So we can put that in the fuck it bucket as well. Get rid of that shit and burn that up too. Fear is not real, because if you start listening to even on the radio, I was driving home and I actually turned the radio on, and every channel was like, make sure you wear your mask. Make sure COVID-19 is real. Don't be in close contact. Stay 1.5 meters away from each other. Blah, 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 blah. They're just putting it all into your mind continuously. And it's on TV all the time, continuously. Now, turn off the radio, play your music up loud. Turn off the TV and watch things in YouTube and other places. They will continue to do this. It's triggering you, and we're going to start doing it back to them. We're going to use words to trigger back. Words that say, grow beyond this and wake up and you'll be okay. But don't hate on people that aren't waking up. I think we stop calling them sheeples and things like that. I think we stop saying nasty things, and we say, I'm coming from a place of love. If you don't want to listen, that's okay. But if they come on here and say something fucking stupid, they're being kicked out, because I don't want people here spreading fear. That's ridiculous. And the people that say, I'm spreading fear, they're not awake. So yeah, fear is an illusion. Now, if you stop getting information that's scaring you every single day, if you actually turn that TV off, and I did it a lot when I was working on other stuff over the last 2 months, zero fear, zero anxiety. Now, what you can do, and the good thing to remember this is, I jumped out of an airplane and I skydived. And leading up to skydiving, I was like, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared. All the day up, I was like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do it, there's no way I can do this. I got in the airplane, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it, it's too hard, da, 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 da. As soon as I jumped out of the airplane, fear blew back away from me. It was like there was no such thing anymore. It was exhilarating, and life was amazing again. And at that moment, I realized fear is not real. It's an illusion. It is there. So say the fear that stops you stepping in front of a bus. That's good fear. Use that fear. Don't let that fear go, because the bus will hurt you. 100%, a bus will hurt you. But irrational fear needs to go. And irrational fear is believing facts and figures without doing any research. If you start researching, you'll believe suddenly your fear will go away. It will dissipate, and you'll start living your life in a better way again. And that's just the truth. That's the truth of all of it, is that if you don't live with fear, do the right things, love one another. But as I keep on saying, replace fear with courage. Replace hate with love. Okay? Replace unknowingly following the narrative with educating yourself and moving forwards. And I just want to say, I believe in all you guys. Keep moving forwards. I know for a fact that we're going to get through all of this, all right? Keep sharing the news, keep telling the truths, and all of you will have amazing lives, okay? I'm going to get going. Share this around for anyone who needs to learn through DHHS just how it works, because I don't want any confusion with quarantine and isolation and sickness and stuff, okay? We don't want it to be confusing for anyone, okay? Are there any other questions? I'm about to disappear. I'm going to go have some dinner and not watch TV and move forwards with love. I love you all. Peace.